AJ, it's great to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute after the program today. I appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you so much for having me here today, Joe. Looking forward to the conversation.
Me too. So before we get into your good work, I always begin with this question. The pandemic. 6 years
Mm.
ago, it did so much to change our lives and our world. How did
Mhm.
you get through that era, and how has it changed the way that you do things today?
Ooh. Um, that's a great question. I've never really thought of it this way. We didn't get through it very well, my wife and I. And by that, I mean, she's in events planning, and within 1 week of March 20th or so of 2020, she lost her job. For me, that put an intense amount of pressure on me because our oldest was just going to college. And so we had a really big college tuition to contend with. And like many people around the world, we did not see this coming. And so that wasn't great. And what what that forced me to do was to stay in an industry that I desperately wanted to get out of because it provided the stability of an income. Even though I was quite frankly miserable inside, that had nothing to do with COVID. I think COVID played a great role in some of the misery that a lot of us shared around isolation and confusion and what does this all mean type questions. But ultimately, for me, I was trying to move my career and my life into a different direction, at least professionally. And I was really trapped in my old world that I was really trying to get out of, but couldn't because of those circumstances. So I would say those were difficult times for at least 2 or 3 years. Were not great for me emotionally. I went through a lot of. Sorry, you're getting a TMI bomb here, Joe.
You're
But
good. No, it's all
I
good.
I really struggled with some high level anxiety. I had a lot to do with this what I just described, wanting to go somewhere else but feeling stuck where you are. And I actually had to work with a therapist, quite frankly, to work my way through it. To get to the second part of your question, so darkness comes before light, right? Winter
Yeah.
comes before spring, and all that stuff. What that reinforced in me is, first of all, my wife and I made it through a pretty difficult time. It was more, financially difficult than anything,
Yeah.
but it also got me through that dark period and launched me into what I'm doing now. And once I left, there was no looking back. And it that sort of identity crisis with my career, I felt like I could cut it loose without ever looking over my shoulder and asking, what if, should I have stayed? What if I hadn't left? Should I go back? Do what I know what I'm doing? I don't have any of those questions. And so I think that's how it helped me move forward, if I think I've adequately answered those questions for you.
You have, and I think living through that probably gave you a better backbone for what you're doing now, I would imagine.
Yes, 1000%. So um, I am actually, I'll just keep going with my TMI bombs here, Joe. I'm a two-time widowmaker heart attack survivor.
Wow.
My first one was in October of 2016, mountain biking. We used to live in the San Francisco Bay Area in a place called Marin County, which is the birthplace of mountain biking. A fun fact for your listeners. Very hilly terrain. And I was going up one of those ascents and had a heart attack, didn't know it. Luckily, I was with three friends who were able to get me down the trail and into a car and to the hospital. And I'm grateful to be here. That event prompted me to reevaluate my life and ask the universe big questions about what do I do next? What is my purpose? What does this second act or this precious gift of life mean for me? And how do I not waste it? And the universe answered, and it told me in no uncertain terms, use your story to help and inspire others. And I grabbed onto that as my life mission. I have never surrendered it, and I will take it to my grave. And that's what prompted me to, in those days, I was long in financial services in the asset and wealth management industries. And I had this calling from a higher power. It was like a lightning bolt to my soul. And from that point forward, from 2016 onwards into COVID, I really thought a lot about how I do help people and who wants to hear my story. There are a lot of people, fortunately, that have survived such health events. What would be interesting about my story? And it took me a while to figure out my place in that world to where I could ultimately leave. And we just talked about some of the emotional dysfunction I was experiencing going through the dark days of COVID. But as I was going through all that, and you were seeing people who were the great resignation, who were executing the great resignation, who were coming to the realization that I don't need to be a butt in a seat. I'm a human being and I can do this job from a place I want to live in, Bozeman, Montana, or wherever people were heading.
Hmm.
And I think the confluence of where I was coming from as a one-time heart attack survivor with this life mission now to help and inspire others to get more out of life, and people with the more systemic situation around COVID and people leaving their jobs in droves because they wanted to do something really meaningful, really brought the two things together for me. Ultimately, after COVID, in April of 2024, so we're almost 8 years removed from the first cardiac event, Joe, I had, well, now our two kids were in college. This particular Saturday, my wife was out running errands, and I decided to honor my commitment to my health as anybody should, I think, but as a one-time survivor, I've got to just keep my heart healthy. I went to the gym, came back to an empty house, got in the shower, put shampoo in my hair, and instantly, no sooner had my shampoo started to suds up in my hair than I felt a very unwelcome and incredibly familiar pain in my chest. And it was number two. And I got out of the shower, called 911. Luckily, I recalled the symptoms from the first one, and we had lights and sirens outside my house in 3 minutes. And they got me in the cabin of the ambulance, called in a code 3, life-threatening situation, and raced with me to the hospital. I think all of those things like brought like the my inner awareness about what I need to be doing post survivor, post cardiac event, the universe opening people's eyes due to the pandemic about, well, who am I and how do I want to show up? And if this is the end of the world, how do I want to spend my life? I want to do it doing something I love or doing something that I like, but I want to do it where I love being. And I think that has all created this nice energy around what we're doing today.
So did you get close to seeing the light or the other side?
Mm-hmm.
What was it like? I always hear it's this unbelievable amount of burden lifting and light and wonder.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, it's a great question. It's one I typically don't wade into those waters because I find it to be a very strange space, but I'll tell you exactly how I felt. It happened during my first one. I was taken to the hospital and they got me into ER, diagnosed it as a full-blown widowmaker, to put defibrillators on my chest and all the things, and started to run down the hall from the ER into the cath lab where they do cardiac procedures, emergency cardiac procedures. On the way to the cath lab, as I think three nurses were pushing my gurney and two IV lines, and I was just laying there looking up at the white ceiling tiles racing by overhead. And I had three thoughts. My first thought was, I don't want my wife to fly home a widow. She was out as an event planner. She was out of town executing an event for a client. I didn't want that my death to fall at her feet, and she would have to fly home with that in her heart. I wanted a proper goodbye. Number two, I left the house to go mountain biking without telling my kids I love them, and I vowed that I wouldn't do that again. Simple thing I'm going to course correct if I'm given a second chance. My third thought was, it's not going to effing happen today. I'm going to walk out of this effing hospital, and I'm being polite.
Yeah, yeah,
There were a lot of F bombs here, but it steeled my reserve. Like, I am walking out of this darn hospital on my own 2 feet, on my own volition. Okay. But while between that second question and that third, like, resolve moment,
yeah.
so the question was, why didn't I say I love you to my kids? And before I'm walking out of this hospital, to answer your question, things were fading. I just felt a sense of warmth, a sense of calmness, a sense of whiteness. Granted, I'm in a hospital, which is always white, so there's some
Yes.
bias there.
Yeah.
But what really is the part that it's sort of hard for me to talk about is I didn't flatline, to be very clear to your listeners. So there was no flatlining here. This wasn't a classic NDE, near death experience, out of body situation. But however, while I was in the gurney, the white ceiling tiles are going by overhead, this figure appeared. And I best describe this figure that looked like, if you're familiar with the Lord of the Ring trilogies or the Hobbit series, Ian McKellen's rendition of Gandalf the White.
Uh-huh.
Something like that. It was a cloaky sort of figure, very with atmospheric energy around it, and it was sort of pushing something towards me, which I took in the moment as like a long, spindly finger sort of curling towards itself, like calling me towards it, but not in a threatening way, not in a scary way, just come. And that's what I experienced. And I talked to my cardiologist after all this happened, and I said, what was that?" And he attributed, of course, very clinically oriented, and well, that might have been the drugs and some of your trauma and blah 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 blah. Drugs being painkillers that they pumped at me to stop the pain in my chest. But it couldn't explain away what I saw and the sense that I had. And so, anyways, that's how I describe it. It didn't happen the second time. I think the second time I knew what was at stake. And
Yeah.
while I waited for 911 and then waited to be driven to the hospital, while terrifying, because I knew every second counts at this point, because the first one I didn't know what was happening until I got to the hospital. This time I knew right away, and I knew every second counts, and I'm on a one-way ticket unless I get incredible intervention very quickly. I just was trying to breathe and keep my eyes open and focus, bro. Focus, focus, focus. Stay awake, stay awake, stay awake.
Yeah.
Keep breathing, keep breathing. Breathe through the pain, breathe through the pain. You can do it. You can do it. Not much farther to the hospital. Keep breathing, that kind of stuff. But yeah, so yeah, definitely for the first
Wow.
one. Yeah, it's real.
Yeah.
It's,
I hear that quite a bit for sure. So let's get a handle on this new adventure that you're on professionally. I'm going to put you in front of 12-year-olds. You're at a
yep,
school, it's
yep,
career day. One of the kids wants to know what you do for a living. How do you synthesize and explain it?
yeah. Adventure is a great word, but I'll tell you this. So I have a company called More. And we help very successful, high achieving people move from this notion of numb success, where they're successful on the outside. They've checked all the boxes of success, but inside it doesn't feel that way. So we help people who feel that way move into what we call aligned living or aligned reinvention, where they come back to themselves and what's really important so that they can feel like a whole human again and bring them closer to their meaning, their purpose, their fulfillment, and their joy in life.
So let's get a handle on how we arrived to where you're at today. Take me back to when you were young. You were that age at career day. What did you want to be when you grew up? What was your dream gig?
I guess it depends on what year it and which career day it was and what grade. I think for sure there was the requisite fireman. That sounded really interesting to me. And then for a little while there, I thought I would become a front man for a globally popular rock band.
Yep.
Just funny, I thought that because I can't really hold a note, but that was a thing. I was like, that's what I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
Those were my two big ones. Yeah.
So, do you remember the first concert you went to?
Oh, I do.
Wait, what was it?
Oh, you're gonna make me admit this. Okay, fair enough. I was in a little bit of a heavy metal era
Yeah.
at this time, and I saw Ozzy Osbourne Bark at the Moon tour that was opened by Motley Crue, Shout at the Devil out. They were
I
touring that Shout at the Devil.
I saw Shout at the Devil when I was a kid, and I still
No
to this day
way.
wonder why my folks let me go to that concert. It was at Kemper Arena.
Same.
It was nuts. They were shooting bottle rockets off. Gals were, disrobing everywhere. It was like, what? Who would do that? Nikki Sixx was tripping the sound guy. It was insane. But Ozzy, in hindsight, that's epic. That's like iconic.
Very iconic. He did not eat a bat. I was 12 years old. I went with my best friend,
Yep.
and we got to the concert. And to your point, I have no idea what our parents were thinking. I don't know if they were out to lunch on this deal or they were like, I don't know. Let them find out.
Yep.
Yeah, it was McNichols Arena, old McNichols Arena in Denver. I grew up just outside Denver.
Yeah.
We were 12 years old, and we got to our balcony seats, and there was a couple behind us. I don't know how old they were. They were older than us, maybe 20. I don't know. Uh, and they tapped me on the shoulder and we turned around. And of course, we were freaked out. We're like, what are we doing? And who are all these people? And they're all older than us. And I think we're way out of our element. Anyway, this couple tapped us on our shoulder. This was way before the show started and asked us, do you guys have a bowl? We were like, all I could think of is, why does he want to eat cereal at a
Yeah.
concert?
Right. That's so cool. I think somebody behind us told us to calm down because we were air guitaring the whole time. It was my friend Bill and I, and we were just jamming the whole time hardcore. So, wow, that's great. What a shared memory, man.
So you
That's
can
so,
relate. Like,
oh, totally. Yeah. And I remember that show so clearly.
yeah.
And I wasn't questioning it at the time, but now I'm like, what were my folks thinking? But it was the 80s. that's
Yep.
just what was going on, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. 82, 83,
Yeah.
84, somewhere in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So, what were these elements? Take me back to your childhood in Denver. What were these elements, these seeds that were planted that gave you this business acumen and now have given you this foresight to help the accomplished people find their real soul and purpose?
Hmm. As a child.
Yeah, some of the seminal things you either
Yeah.
witnessed or that were planted.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the big ones is that my family came out to California on the wagon trail. Um, they were right around the same time that the Donner Party, for those who are familiar with that pretty tragic story, the Wagoneers who got stuck in Truckee, California, and there was cannibalism, you know, stuck in all the snow and everything. My ancestors did a bit of a hook right around that area and went south, and then once they got to a place where they could get through the Sierra Nevadas, just pointed due west and landed in Monterey and actually ended up building the first brick house in the state of California in 1849, and it's a museum now. I think that was a really big story for me as a child that my ancestors took the risk to do something that they believed in. Um, when you go back to that time, late 1840s, and crossing the country in a wagon train, like it was fraught with all sorts of peril and issues and risks. But they did it and hoping for a better life and better opportunities. So that always stuck with me as one really important data point that that you can take risks and it's part of who we are and can be part of who I am. That was really important. Another data point was my mother. When I was a sophomore in high school, she was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and her oncologist gave her about 20% chance of survival. It was devastating for me, and my grades really sank that year as a result. My worst performing academic year I think I ever had. And but what I remember is she fought cancer, and she's still with us to this day. She fought cancer like it was no one's business. And she was unabashed by it. She did no problem not wearing a wig to parties. And she's like, I'm just going to own this. Very specifically, growing up in Colorado, we are surrounded, well, on the western side of the state, of course, the Rocky Mountains, and they're 52, 14,000-foot peaks throughout the state of Colorado. And my family, my mom in particular, was really into climbing the 14ers, as they're called. She said to her oncologist, I'm going to continue climbing. I don't care. And in her weakest state, middle of chemotherapy and all the things, she hiked. We did a family hike up. I wish I could remember which peak it was. I have pictures of it. Shamefully, I can't remember the peak. But in any event,
Yeah.
she gets to the top and she had a hat on to keep her head warm because it's brisk up there, and took her hat off. And we took a family picture. Of course, she's bald, and I just, it implanted on me this element of facing fear,
Yeah.
not being afraid. You can control some of these things. It's your mindset to not be afraid in these scenarios when you may be weakened or compromised or challenged or have really, really, really strong headwinds against you. So that was really important to me too. Certainly, I had a little lawn mowing business. So I can't say I was like a 15-year-old scion of industry or anything like that, but I had a little taste of being responsible and being accountable and doing a good job for others, not just chores around the house. And there are plenty of those growing up, but actually showing up to mow people's lawns on the weekend kind of thing. That
Yeah.
was important.
That painting should be a mural on the side of a cancer research building. That would be such a
Yeah.
good, beautiful
Yeah.
visage. So when the alarm clock goes off in the morning, what gets your feet to hit the ground?
Oh, okay. So the first of all, every morning I say, thank you for this day. Um, it's just an affirmation I do because of the health things that I've shared earlier in this conversation. And so I want to make sure that I recognize that I'm grateful for the day that we have. Number two, I love, and you called it an adventure earlier, this new company that I've created and how we're showing up to serve others. and we're creating a bit of a new space um, in the world that we're moving into. But ultimately, I've I've changed my whole career up until I made this change. So as I said earlier, I was in financial services, asset wealth management. So much of that career was advancement. We're hitting these external markers of success. Like, how do I make more money? How do I get a bigger bonus? How do I get promoted? How do I get a bigger team, bigger work remit? How do I get more stock options? All these sorts of things. It was in service of myself. Obviously, I'm providing for my family and our future, but I wasn't a lot of service of others. Some volunteer work here and there, and writing checks for causes we care about. But now, what I'm doing, I'm just everything I do, everything I make is professionally is in the service of others and helping them get more out of life and living a richer, fuller life. And that makes me happy. And that's what gets me out of bed. That I'm on this mission. For me, as I said earlier, I felt a calling from some other power, whatever one's belief system is, whether it's a voice of God moment, the universe spoke to me, whatever it was. Like, this is what I need to be doing, and what it is helping others, inspiring others to get more out of life. And I'm following that, and I'm building something that I'm really excited about, and we're helping people, and that is just what we're all about. And so that gets me out of bed in the morning and doing the Snoopy dance.
For sure. I love it. So let's say you had a dream tonight. You ran into the 18-year-old version of you, and you
Mhm.
walked into that room, your room that you had at that point in your life, and there was a film projector, and you walked up at your age now and clicked the button in a 60-second highlight reel of your life. Everything professionally, personally that's transpired up to this point. Would that young version of you believe that this is the life that you've lived and orchestrated and had the chance to lead?
No.
Yeah.
No, not even close.
Would you give any advice
To whom? To that 18-year-old
yeah,
self?
that young version?
Hmm. I think I would reinforce the notion to my 18-year-old self that run your own race, just run your own race and show up in ways for other people to help them, to benefit them. I think, as I alluded to earlier, like, there was a lot of focus on getting into the quote unquote rat race and climbing the quote unquote ladder and all that kind of stuff. A lot of that was driven by expectations around me, rightly or wrongly, that I picked up along the way, either through society or parental expectations or my own expectations of myself or whatever, that this is what I needed to do. And I would get really unhealthily wound up when things didn't go the way I envisioned them professionally. Like, I didn't get the promotion someone else did. And like, why do they get it and I didn't? And all this sort of stuff. I'm like, you know what? We all our our paths are also different and unique unto ourselves, and just allow that to be okay.
Yeah,
And don't
totally.
fight it so hard. And you're going to make yourself miserable
Uh,
and stress yourself out beyond belief. And I definitely wrestled with some of that in the late 20s and 30s, into my early 40s, even, I'd say. And I would want to make sure that that 18-year-old self knew that it was okay, that I had the permission to pursue what I cared about, and it was okay.
So let's get to the crux of things here, AJ. Everyone has a
Mhm.
perception of you. Family, friends, clients, everyone you work with, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Hmm. Well, there's what I hope and what I think. I think I would say I believe that people see me as a very, very earnest, very loyal, innovative person, um, who has some sort of professional acumen. um, but I, but ultimately, I think they would see me, especially certainly on the friend side, as someone who really cares.
So if anybody's ready for the next step, they want to reach out, they want to hire you, they have questions, any of the good business, where's the best place to go?
Great question, and I will send them right away to our website, bemorealigned.com.
Okay.
Bemorealigned.com.
Okay. I will put this link in the show notes. AJ, thank you, sir. What a wonderfully flavor-rich story. Thank you so much for taking a minute out. I'm so glad that we have this shared. I haven't talked to anybody that's been to that Motley Crue show, so and at that
Yeah,
age, too.
me neither. Yeah, that's cool that we have that in common.
Totally cool. Yeah, and we didn't have to do the jazz thing, so we're good. AJ, thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your time. Best of luck
Thank you,
with
Joe.
everything.
Thank you for this opportunity. You bet.
It's been an honor.